Hello. Today I'm talking to Joe Gagnon. He is an amazing individual, a six-time CEO, an ultra marathon runner, ultra sports athlete, and I'm very excited to talk to you, Joe. Welcome.
Thanks, Jenny. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your sports involvement.
So I always like to put the context of how I ended up sort of where I am in the form of like a little bit of the first half of my career and the second half, just because I think it makes more sense then. We won't talk about my high school or college days, right? But, in the first half of my business career, I always said I was really good at working. I was a good white collar worker, got into the tech world, loved it, from the early days of sort of, re-engineering and business transformation through technology. But I think I lost myself a little bit along that path, which was, just become a workaholic and focus on making money and optimizing on not much more than that, And so in my late 30s, I hit this sort of moment of this couldn't be the end of the story. There has to be something more, because imagine doing this for 50 more years. I probably wouldn't even live to then, So little by little, I endeavored to figure out what was possible and where my potential could lead me. I left Ernst & Young after I was a partner there for many years and joined a startup, one of actually, even before the six that I've been the CEO, one of the 5 founders of a company. And I joined just a bunch of like sort of energized, really smart people. And I thought, boy, I better show up a little better. So I started with the idea that, maybe I could do 1 push-up and 1 mile. And I wasn't really very good at it. And so I made a commitment that I would try and work out 3 days a week. I put it in our newsletter. I created a spreadsheet, which now, 25 years later, I've kept track of what I've done every day. And it sort of became a bit of a catalyst with accountability tied together for you can, instead of working 80 hours, you could work 60 hours and you'd have 20 hours a week to work out. And somewhere along the way, I actually became a writer, and I've been writing for 4,700 days in a row. And so I do everything that I do pretty consistently. And in the athletic space, since I wasn't a high school or a college athlete, I just had to learn a lot. I had to learn about, in the beginning it was running, then it became running and biking, then it became running, biking, swimming, and it became a triathlete, then an Ironman. And then, after doing that 6 times, I started doing marathons and got pretty good at running just the road marathon, did 35 of them. And then I got into the ultra marathoning world, and I've done 60 ultra marathons, which is anything longer than 30 miles, including many 100-mile races. It culminated and continues, but it culminated in 2017 with an adventure I created for myself of a marathon on 6 continents in 6 days. And so fly 30,000 miles around the world, run 157 miles, sleep 14 hours in a week. And just sort of in this journey, while I'm, running early stage companies, raising money, sort of trying to bring my solution to market, I was trying to build, a power system inside myself that would allow me to both endure sort of the challenge and struggle that one would have, but also sort of appreciate it both physically and intellectually. And so I just worked to manage my time every day, every week, every month, every year towards a set of new goals and objectives. And I kept using the spreadsheet to keep me accountable, and then made big challenges for the following year. And I found that, I could first do 3 hours, then 5 hours, 10, 20, 50, 70, 90, 100 hours. It didn't really matter the amount of time I was willing to, not just working out, but like an event. I found that the longer it went, the better I got. The more the discomfort, the better I enjoyed it. And as I like to say in my new book, you find meaning through suffering. And so it's been just an extraordinary journey, and I'm still just learning.
That's amazing. It makes me feel like I have done nothing with my life in comparison. So that's really
I don't think it's ever too late, first of all, right? And I think that that's part of what I learned, because I could have done something in my 20s and 30s that would have been more sort of productive. I like to think about, an enablement mindset and this sort of radical possibility thing, which says, what you really have is 168 hours every week if you want to count it by week. That's your currency. How do you use your time? Are we thinking intentionally about that? Does it connect to our purpose? Do we have a plan? Are we building ourselves to fit to that purpose and the path that we want to put ourselves on? And so that should start anytime, which is why I wrote this second book called Living Intentionally, which is to say that we can build a structure. Mine took a long time. It took me a long time to learn what I'm able to tell you in a short period of time. I would like to shorten that path for a lot of people. So instead of 25 years of learning, maybe it only takes 5. But I also found just a love for, sort of the hard problem, which I think we find every day. It's like, oh, I can't do this. I don't want to do that. I don't like. And so my mindset is completely different. It's on the other side, which is to, growth happens through discomfort, through failure, through pain, through suffering, that we need to lean into sort of the growth part of our mindset, not the, just trying to survive. And you actually feel better when you do that. But it could start today. It doesn't have to, have been something we did before.
It makes me think about our current education system and how maybe we shouldn't get on that topic. But
no, I looked at that. I worked, as a CEO of an education company for 4 years, and we were building online learning for both high schoolers and post-secondary. And I do think that our system, which was designed in the late 1800s, needs some modifications and updates. I think that, like AI should not be antagonistic to learning. It should be complementary to learning. The core of, literacy and critical thinking do matter, of course, but trigonometry, algebra, and calculus, I don't know. Like what does that actually do? The concepts, yes, but the subjects, probably not. And so, yeah, I do think we should think about education and then the integration of who we are as a person and how we live our life with our education, the physical representation, like everyone says, oh, the mind and the body, they're one. There's not two separate things. This is an integrated system that it's almost like if you had a lot of money in your bank account or your brokerage account and you never used it, what a tragedy would that be? It's the same potential we have inside us. We need to unlock it and leverage it and use it, because that's really what, allowed me to achieve what I did, because I had a pretty humble start. I was pretty much in debt, bankrupt, no community, no support, no big diploma, no network to pull on, and just myself. That was the resource I had. It turned out to be a pretty good resource because I just figured out how to use it.
But this idea of we learn through discomfort, that's an area, I shouldn't give my opinion on this, but it's all about keeping everybody comfortable and safe, and you don't have to work very hard. And so those are the things that I...
But Jenny, to what point? To what end? Like,
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that a satisfying end game for us? I mean, I do believe that the human system does operate in a state of stability and rest, but that's surviving. Who wants to survive? I don't think any human just wants to survive. We're built to thrive. But to thrive, you cannot just have comfort. Comfort actually is just a protection vehicle that we needed 10 or 20,000 years ago, when we didn't know where food would come from. We didn't have technology sitting in our hands and around us everywhere. We live in this world of abundance and we operate as if there's a world of scarcity. But this isn't, it's like an intellectual leap. This is actually a personal choice. I don't judge anyone for what they want to do. That's fine. The only thing that I know for sure is if you want to do more, you can. That's it. It's like it's ready to go. It's like just sitting there. It's like push the button and it's on.
Do you coach people? Tell me about that work?
So, when I wrote, like in my sort of like, sometimes I always feel funny because I would talk about myself, but it's partially because I'm trying to role model behavior that I hope other people can choose to or not, right, follow. So I wrote the first book, was called Living the High Performance Life. I was a performance-minded person. Every second, every minute, every dollar, everything counted. And then I stepped back and realized, like, maybe that isn't the only point of life, that really there's a higher purpose that we're here for. And so, I wrote a second book called Living Intentionally, which is the foundation of sort of living into a purpose or a why. And so the first chapter is define your why. And for me, it's to build myself so I can build other people. So I live in a life of service. I want to service everyone, whether I'm a CEO or not. I'm here to help the rest of the world grow into the levels that they want to. But to do that, I need to both have the experience of walk the walk or have the lived and earned experience so that I could actually be able to give reasonable advice. And so now it's like, it's a funny thing. Like I'm coming up on 100 times I've run a marathon or longer. And I'm like, okay, now I think I have enough experience to coach people if they want to plan. I've run 6 companies. I've raised $175 million, written a lot, for 4,000 days. I probably am a reasonable writer, so now I'm ready to take on that bold and, humbling opportunity to help people on their choices and what they want to be. So I'm not like a a soft coach just asking people what do they want to be and become. I want to actually push and challenge people, to lean into what the opportunities are. I think we actually know most of the ways that we should do this. And so I like to provide some structure, which is again why I wrote the book, because it starts with, not just defining your why, but building the pillars, understanding the role of discomfort and mastering reflection. That's a first part of this book, right? Which is that then I have tools. Now I can actually show up better. Then it's how do I fit into my community? How do I show up every day? What's the ripple effect of what I do? How does that affect the world around me? And then ultimately there's a legacy, whether living or not. The legacy is, like if you thought about purpose, you'd sort of say, did something that I do that would, approximate good, you could define that, affect how someone else lived so that they lived a better life. And if that happened, then what you did had meaning, because I think that if we look back in life, we could all say, oh yeah, that person helped me, or I admired another person. But imagine if we were all doing that for each other all the time, here to support and help and grow each other, share in this abundance that we have, with a commitment to a social contract that we all have an equal right to the opportunities it means to be human and alive. And so I want everyone to feel like there is someone out here who wants to do that for each other. Like I'm not here trying to make it better for me. I'm trying here to make it better for everyone else. And that is actually, truth is, it's more fun than crossing the finish line when someone else crosses it and you were part of their team.
So tell us about your current company, Raynmaker.
Yeah. So, I had the chance to do a lot of innovative tech work in my career, way back from, when the World Wide Web came into being to, e-commerce and, all the rest of it. And now with the emergence of AI, not really just as a chatbot, but as an opportunity to rethink how business processes work. At Raynmaker, we're endeavoring to build a sales platform that leverages machine learning, AI, knowledge, and workflow to help small businesses sell better, more predictably at a lower cost. Small businesses, there's 30 million of them in the US, they're the lifeblood of the country. It's all about the American dream. However, once we find our way into it, it's hard. It's just hard. You don't have a lot of resources. And we want to give you a sort of a virtual kind of team that actually performs better than any individual can more consistently. And so we're working on a lot of novel ideas. We have the integral part of our system is what we call the Rain Brain, which is essentially, the thinking part of our experience of sales experts and of lots of sales calls that would be able to use an LLM to derive insights from, to do sort of a new way of thinking about lead scoring and creating, an end-to-end integrated platform that a small business owner at what we would believe is a nominal cost can implement and execute. So they can focus on why they started or run their business is to deliver the service and support their customers. And we can help them go take those leads that they buy and get the best return on them and turn them into customers. And it's a really exciting opportunity for us. It is fun to sort of be right in the middle of the AI conversation.
What do you see for the company down the road, let's say in the next year or two?
Yeah, that can't go too far because sometimes we go crazy with a lot of thoughts. I think that the biggest and most important part of this is to say that predictability with the platform, so you can trust that you can use technology in addition to and complementary to people. So first and foremost, it's that we can onboard and just let it run and perform better. What we're going to do is integrate service and sales together because the customer or the consumer doesn't think any differently about those. So if they want to call to buy something, or they want to call to talk about something, or email or text or do any of those forms of communication, we want to support both of those modalities, sales and support. And then lastly, it's going to be a different view of what CRM is in the future, because we're going to have a lot more detailed information about what makes a successful customer in small business. And it won't be a static set of information that you store and access really only for invoicing, but rather a dynamic view of how to provide services to customers in the future. So, you'll see us go from, we have customers today to tens of thousands of customers. But more importantly, it's to be a partner on their journey to build their small business. So we want to be like their business partner that they don't have to hire, but can leverage and use.
Are there particular industries that you're targeting?
Yeah, let's start with home services because, in selling versus ordering, right? Like you can order a pizza or order, I don't know, a notebook on Amazon. Those are different than selling or buying, so in this home services, the person who wants to buy something wants to talk to someone often because they have questions. There's only so much information you can put on the website. And so it's helping home service companies be able to communicate their offering to the market more effectively and to get those people who are qualified customers to buy, and get over any objections they might have and provide them the right information. And so we think home service is the first part. And there's a lot of home service business. I mean, from house cleaning and dog walking to window cleaning, HVAC, mowing my lawn, anything that relates to my home. I want to probably talk to the people about how they're going to do that. And so that's our initial focus. But there isn't any reason that a sales platform couldn't work for any business. But our initial focus is absolutely on the small and medium business. We'll leave the enterprise stuff for the Salesforce companies like that for now.
And then you'll go up market.
We can. I think we'll probably be pulled that way rather than have to push our way into that. Look, I've done this enough times that both I've been ahead of technology curves and sort of probably, timed well with it. Our sort of perspective is that we're at the perfect timing. Very few people ever really wanted to try and solve for sales because there's a lot of what we think is subjectivity, but we actually know that it's very little subjectivity. There's a sales process. There's a way to measure. We can create analytics, math, all of this predictively model. Once that, and November 1st of this year is our true first major release, not just running, our anytime agent, but short end to end from lead through scheduling to payment. Once the world starts to see that, we're going to see a lot of people really interested in what we're doing.
So the platform goes all the way through invoicing for the service.
Yes.
That's great. That's a lot. That's great.
Yeah. I think that we're good timing, You can integrate to a calendar and you can integrate to Stripe and we can integrate to a CRM through APIs, all of this stuff. We should just make it easy we don't want the small business owner to try to become a technician, right? They just should do what they set out to do. So in that way, for us, it's really important that we integrate to their core systems and don't make them change those out, but get the data that they need, update their system of record, and make sure this all works together.
So what advice would you give to someone who wants to do a startup in the technology world today?
Yeah, I think that it's always easy to have a product idea. Hard part. I think finding the right target customer and understanding your customer and their needs is probably the most important, right? So that'd be figure out who your target customer is and then do some work on what your business model looks like. It's actually pretty simple. It's going to sound almost embarrassingly simple, which is how much dollars times how many customers times what gross margin. And if you do that math, then you got to say if I want to be a $10 million company, imagine if I sold everything was $1 million, I would just need 10 customers. Well, how would I find 10 customers to pay me $1 million? And if you start to just think of building blocks, that's essential to getting to a real place where you could have an ongoing business. I think having innovative software is always fun, but may not have practical applicability in the market. So get to a proof of concept. Yes. Find that customer, see if you have product market fit, make sure your business model is sound, and then, work your pipeline. How many leads do you need to be able to convert to how many customers at what price against what lifetime value? If you can get that all on one piece of paper, you probably have a worthwhile, business endeavor to go after.
Now you've gotten funding for multiple companies. So once you've done that a few times, you become known. How do you think it's more difficult today or easier to get funding for startups?
I think there are some moments in time when it was easier, when the cost of capital was very low during the pandemic. I think it was somewhat misleading. If we take that anomaly out of that moment, it's been the same for the past 25 years. It still comes down to, you have to have a solid business model. You got to understand, the role of pre-seed, seed, A round, B round. You got to understand why they would invest, what they would be looking for, so my success has always been sort of having answers to all the questions that they're going to ask you before they ask you. They're sort of relatively predictable. Forget the pitch deck. The pitch deck should only be a manifestation of being able to answer the questions an investor needs to have answered. And if you can have those questions answered effectively, then you can raise money. I think that money is always available, I think we just never pushed the bar hard enough. Like I would say, you could call someone who did one marathon a marathoner, or you could call someone who did 35 marathons a marathoner. There's a big difference. And I think that's the same. Like, you can't just write 10 slides and have a little bit of code and think someone's going to fund you. I think you got to go deeper. And I think you have to show the world how you have something that's different. And it's not just in the novelty of your idea, because many of them have been let on the cutting floor, probably more times than not. It's about building a business, understanding your customer, and then telling someone how you're going to build a company. And I've had some good success in doing that.
How can you take that same mindset and those skills and make a difference inside of a company instead of saying, I want to start my own company?
What about
being an entrepreneur?
I like that more personally. I think that, the transition of stages in a company are important. We have a saying at Raynmaker, we're not trying to be right. We want to get it right. So having an open mindset about innovation, about listening to the market, about talking to customers, about getting feedback. I don't think that it's that complicated. I think we often just get wrapped up in what we've been doing and think that that's just going to continue to repeat itself. I think that having a listening organization that listens both to employees and the market and the customers, looks at the competitive landscape, and does that on a regular basis, has a higher probability of maintaining relevance. Because every company has grown and morphed and changed. All the big ones we hear to even the smallest ones. And it's this willingness to embrace transitions and transformation that really is what will keep us relevant for long periods of time. There are a lot of companies who used to be in the Fortune 500 who are not any longer. And that's, because they didn't transition when they needed to. And so having that sort of just this je ne sais quoi of, an open and growth mindset is really important. And I think you can do that inside an organization, but you got to have a value system that supports that. And we've all seen how it doesn't work. So let's try and stay away from what we know doesn't work, which is closing conversations, telling people why they're wrong. That won't work here. Like, okay, sure. Why? But we can get there. I've been able to do it. And I think that, having the right team around the table with that kind of agreement really helps.
And being willing to be uncomfortable in those.
Yeah, these words, I don't understand them. Like, what is uncomfortable? Like, that's a state that we've made feel negative. What if that's a state that's positive? What if it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to go feel something, learn something, do something differently, rather than, oh my gosh, I'm wondering what might happen. Like, I don't ever worry about what might happen. I want to actually go find out what's going to happen. Like, that is the fundamental difference, I think, between someone who's a real entrepreneur and someone who gets stuck. There isn't, like, when I did the 6 marathon, 6 continents, I wrote myself a note at the beginning of the week that said, the lows would be the highs. I went looking for the low. And when I finished, and I wrote about this in the book, I was like, oh, I never found the lows. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe that's because I defined that way. The lows were the highs. So I only had highs. I don't know why we get stuck in this idea of, either discomfort, uncomfortable, suffering, struggle. Like, these are things we stay away from. Like, we have this fun thing in our little business doing coaching on the side. It's like, if you need a breakthrough, the next time it's going to rain really hard and maybe it's not 34 degrees, go outside without an umbrella and without a coat and get soaked through. Like, just walk around in the rain and come back and get changed. And 30 minutes later, you can be like, well, nothing happened negatively. Imagine that. I'm fine. And you had this, like, everyone's so like, oh my God, it's raining. We can't go do anything. I'm like, oh my God, it's raining. Let's go outside. Like, let's demystify all of these stories we've been told about what's possible into embracing the way that this life can happen. And it gets mighty magical.
Joe, you are an absolute inspiration.
Thanks.
The minute I'm done with this call, I'm going to go to Amazon and get your book, Living Intentionally.
Thank you.
And I hope that your message continues to spread and you infect this enthusiasm through more and more people.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jenny. I got my lottery ticket when I was born. I don't need to buy one. It's me. And I've cashed it all along the way. And I don't need to look for anything else. It's inside me. And if that was the blessing that, I figured out, then I just want everyone else to feel the same way. It doesn't mean instantaneously, like this is like, I don't want the story to end now, like by knowing everything. Like the mystery of what's next, the feeling of excitement, of still being childlike and curious. These are all the things that are inside us, that the narrative that's sometimes in the news and around us is not the narrative that we should live to. And this is the choice that we have. And so, yeah, thank you for having me on and listening to your listeners. I'm out here to help and support you. Reach out anytime.
Thank you, Joe.